Welcome to ePathshala lecture series on computer science. In today's module on data analytics, we will be discussing about how to understand the various criterions that might highlight a good analysis, followed by how to frame a problem correctly, because problem framing is very important for analysis, followed by what inferences can be made and how good inferences may be made, and finally, we will come to know about various open source platforms or supports for analytics. To begin with, let us first analyze what are the various criteria that may highlight a good analysis. So, to start with, we should first know the differences between general reporting and analysis. So, reporting, in many scenarios what people will try to do is they will try to equate reporting to analysis, but practically speaking reporting is not same as analysis. So, what exactly a reporting environment, especially in terms of business intelligence environments, do? Initially, we will have to select the reports that we want to run. Then we need to execute those reports. Those reports executing in the sense we will be having certain queries, standard queries, which when run on the database or the tables available in the database, it will provide us results. So, these results will be finally viewed by us. So, here we are fundamentally going to have a template of queries. All that we are going to do is we are going to provide inputs to these templates, and these templates are run in the form of a query in the normal database environment. So, this is what is report generation. So, when we take a reporting environment, what fundamentally it highlights? The first thing is it is going to be inflexible, because when we talk about reporting, we normally standardize the procedure. We actually have a standard template into which we are going to fill in the details for the purpose of getting the report. So, there will not be any flexibility in terms of or from the perspective of the person who is going to do the analysis. So, reporting fundamentally is inflexible. The second thing is, once we run a report generation environment or once we run any report generating query, it is going to return us only a data. It is not going to return us an information or a knowledge. So, all we get is only a data from a database environment. So, when a decision making agent or when a decision maker wants to take some decision in the real world scenario, data is already available in the database. Once again getting a data in the form of a report does not support or is not required for decision making process. And the third important point is report generation is fundamentally a predefined form. So, as I already mentioned, all that we are going to do is we are going to provide input to say standard queries, and these queries will return us data. Now, let us understand what exactly is analysis. So, analysis is going to be an interactive process, and in this process what exactly happens is we need to tackle a problem. So, it is an interactive process towards tackling a problem, finding the data that is required, because when we want to tackle a problem, fundamentally we need to have a data for the purpose of understanding the problem first. So, we need to identify what is the relevant data, then we need to analyze the data. So, analyzing here in the sense it can be say a kind of drilling down into the data, or it can be rolling up to a very abstract level information, or looking at the same data in different dimension, or performing certain mining algorithm or using certain mining algorithm for the purpose of extracting certain patterns. These patterns need to be previously unknown and they should be useful for the business scenario. Only then the analysis will be useful. So, we need to identify the relevant data and then run the analysis over the data, and the results that we get out of the analysis need to be interpreted, because interpretation of a result if it becomes too difficult, naturally what happens is the person who is trying to make a decision will not be in a position to understand what exactly the analysis is going to provide us or what exactly the analysis has provided us. So, interpretation becomes a very vital part of analysis. So, analysis is going to be an interactive process involving the above mentioned 4 processes. So, primarily an analysis is going to be flexible, because as we mentioned in the reporting environment, it is not flexible, but here it is flexible from the perspective of the analyst. Analyst, whatever he or she wants to do an analysis, accordingly they can collect the data and they can run the analysis or algorithm over the data. Secondly, it provides us answer which is going to be an information or which is going to be a knowledge. So, this information or knowledge will be very important from a decision making process perspective. And the third perspective is it is customized. It is not a predefined form as in reporting, it is going to be customized. So, what is customized? According to the analysis or according to the necessity of the analysis, we will be identifying data and we will be defining what must be the output. So, accordingly the output might vary from one form of analysis to another form of analysis, and hence it is treated to be customized. Having understood what is reporting and analysis, now let us summarize what are the differences between reporting and analysis. As I have already mentioned, reporting just provides us the data which is already there, but analysis is not so. Analysis provides us information or answers to the queries. Reporting actually provides what exactly we have asked, but analysis provides more than that, that is, it provides us what exactly is needed for the current scenario or for the decision making environment. Reporting is typically standardized. Standardized here in the sense we have some set of templates or template queries which is going to be executed on certain tables, but in analysis environment it is typically customized. So, as per the need or as per the requirement, collection of data, its integration and finally running the analysis over the integrated data varies as per the requirement or as per the decision making environment. Reporting does not involve a person, but analysis must compulsorily involve a person, because an analyst only can easily identify what exactly is going to be the interpretation of the result. So, an expert user or say a person who is completely involved in such business scenario need to be there for the purpose of analyzing whether the results provided by the analysis are really good or whether they can be useful for the given business scenario. And finally, reporting is fairly inflexible, but analysis is going to be extremely flexible both from the perspective of analyst as well as from the perspective of users. Now, when we run an analysis, we need to say whether it is a good analysis. So, with what factors we can clearly say whether an analysis is correct or not. So, there are certain criteria with which we can clearly say whether an analysis is good or bad. So, what are the criteria? Great is actually a criteria that will add value to any analysis. So, what exactly is this great? So, G in great stands for guided, that is, it is guided by a business need. So, according to the need that is necessary in a business scenario, accordingly the analysis is going to be done. So, therefore, it is guided by means of a business need. R in great stands for relevant, that is, the data that we are trying to collect for the purpose of analysis and the data that we are going to use in the analysis, and finally, the patterns that we are going to get as a result of analysis must be relevant to the business scenario. So, therefore, R stands for relevant. E in the great stands for explainable. Analysis need to be explainable very easily and effectively. A in great stands for actionable. A great analysis will actually be actionable. Actionable here in the sense it can be implemented in the real scenario. And T in great actually stands for timely. So, analysis will be delivered on a timely fashion. So, whenever we are trying to do an analysis, analysis must be guided by a business requirement, it must be timely, it must be relevant to the given business scenario, it must be easily understandable or explainable, and it must be implementable effectively. So, only when all these 5 criteria are satisfied, then only we can say an analysis is said to be a good analysis or wrong. What is actually core analytics? So, we should understand certain differences between core analytics or analytics that is in depth. So, first we should understand what is a core analytics. So, core analytics actually tends to ask very simple questions on the data that we have collected. What may be those questions? For example, what has happened in the business environment, when it has happened in the business environment, and what the impact was. Say for example, if I am running a business, I may be associated to sales of a product. So, what happened is nothing but say the sales. When it has happened is associated to the time, and what the impact was. Say if I have more number of sales associated to a product, then it shows greater demand for that particular product. So, these are all certain simple questions which can be answered from the data that we have in our transactional environment. Say for example, in sales promotion, how many subscribers have signed up? This can be a very simple question answered from the data that we have already in our database. How did the sign up occur every day? The sign up, whether it has happened online or whether it has happened offline. How much money did the new subscribers bring in? So, all these information can be easily pulled from the transactional environment. So, core analytics deals only with such fundamental questions which can be standardized or which can also be in the form of a report generating format. Now, when we want to go more than this core analytics, that is when we want to do advanced analytics, what exactly it is? So, advanced analytics actually moves in depth with respect to core analytics, that is we are going to go further than the core analytics. So, as part of core analytics, we just ran simple queries, and as part of the simple queries we can come with certain conclusions. So, those conclusions can be raised with questions like what caused it happen. Say for example, if a particular product sales is in peak, then we can easily identify what was the reason behind it. So, a question like what caused it to happen, why there is a demand, can be a question which need to be analyzed in depth with respect to the product details or with respect to the sales associated with the product. Then another question is what can be done in the future. Once we have identified there is a demand, then what is that next we can do in the future. So, all these questions can be analyzed only with the help of additional information or fact. So, we cannot directly get answers from the data that is available in the database for such questions. So, for such questions we need to do more of mining. Another example for advanced analytics, say in customer web activity, identify the relationship between browsing and sales. Say for example, if I am participating in say online purchase of certain product, then I might have browsed the product details in a particular website. So, what are the web pages the customer browsed through, and then what were the products that were purchased by the customer. So, can I infer a relationship between the web pages that I browsed and the products which I have purchased. So, this provides a relationship between the browsing activity and the sales or the transaction which was performed by me. Formulate a strategy for marketing. Having identified which web pages, which products did I view in the given website, then I can easily come up with a methodology for the purpose of promoting a product. So, I can easily formulate a strategy for marketing a particular product. All these things can happen only when we infer additional information apart from core analytics from the database environment. Now, when we are trying to do an analysis, what exactly we need to do? Because when we run an analysis on a given set of data, we may end up with lots of conclusions. Now, we will have to carefully analyze or understand these conclusions. Only then we will be in a position to make use of the correct results for the purpose of decision making process. So, what exactly we need to do is we need to hand pick certain analysis and results of those analysis. So, we need to identify whether the results actually serve for the purpose, that is for whatever purpose did I run the analysis, whether the results support it. Only such analysis and the results or the patterns associated to such analysis need to be used by us for decision making process. Else we can simply ignore other results which are not going to be relevant for my analysis or which do not support the relevancy of the analysis. So, all that we need to do is while we are running the analysis, we must be very careful in terms of picking the results or the analytical methods that might support the final outcome. Having understood what are the various criterions for identifying good analysis, next let us discuss about frame the problem, that is how a problem can be correctly framed. Actually speaking, problem framing is very important for any analysis, because while we are trying to do an analysis or when we are about to do an analysis, what is it we need to do is we need to clearly identify what is the exact problem. So, great analysis actually starts with framing the problem correctly. Now, when we want to frame the problem correctly, what are the things that we need to do? We need to assess the data correctly. only then we can clearly know what is the exact problem. Accordingly, we can choose the data. So, we need to assess the data properly. Then we will have to develop a solid analysis plan. Only having analyzed the data for its quality, only then or for the relevancy with respect to the given problem, only then we can come up with a plan. So, after analyzing and assessing the data properly, then we need to end up with a solid activity or analysis plan. Then technical and practical considerations should be taken into consideration. Why this is very important is, whenever we are coming up with say an analysis plan, there may be certain criteria which need to be satisfied from a business point of view. Therefore, technical as well as practical considerations need to be considered for the purpose of analysis. Only then the analysis will be perfect. So, framing the problem is the most important step of analysis. Now, when we are doing an analysis, we need to identify whether the results that you have arrived is significant statistically. So, we need to perform statistical significance. So, what exactly is statistical significance? It is a process or method by which we are trying to evaluate the parameter estimates. So, whatever we have arrived or whatever data that we have collected, using the statistics of the data, we can say whether it is significant with respect to the analysis we are going to perform or significant with respect to the problem requirement. Statistical significance will validate the conclusions. A statistical significance will validate the conclusions. Whatever results that we get out of any analysis need to be validated, and this validation can happen with the help of statistical significance. When we are trying to do an analysis, this is another important thing which we should not do. That is, we should not run our analysis with limited data, or we should not come to a conclusion with a limited set of data. So, we should ensure whether we have all the data that is required for our analysis well in hand before running or doing the analysis. With a minimal set of data, we should not run the analysis and come to a conclusion. For example, in this example, we are going to identify who is having a average batting, higher average batting. Assume this is the initial set of data that we have collected. Here we have two persons X and Y and the various seasons in which these two persons have played, and their averages are highlighted here. According to the average, we find that the person Y is the winner, and therefore, what we do is we conclude that Y is the person who is a good batsman or who is having a higher average. But practically speaking, when we go in depth into the data, there may be a completely different conclusion that we can arrive, because sometimes the analysis that we do with the help of limited data might result in a wrong conclusion. Now, let us analyze these two persons with more detailed data. Say you have the X person's average, how many number of runs scored by that particular person, how many matches played by that particular person, etc., are considered here, and for each and every person we try to take the total of their averages, their batting score, all these parameters are averaged, and finally, we can find that the person X is going to have higher average when compared with say person Y. So, finally, what is that we can conclude is, we can conclude that person X has more average in this scenario. So, what exactly I am trying to say here is, with a limited data like this, we may end up with a wrong conclusion. So, therefore, we should not run the analysis with a limited data. Instead, we should collect all relevant data required for our analysis, and then only we should start the analysis. After running the analysis, we should also find another important factor which must suit to the analysis. What the factor is? It is the business requirement or importance with respect to the business scenario. After running the statistical significance, we should also match the results or say the output of the analysis with respect to the business perspective. For example, whenever we are running a business, we will also try to look into what is the cost that is involved towards running this analysis. So, what are the costs to make the recommended changes? Then can any additional revenue be generated based on the final outcome of the analysis? Is the approach consistent with respect to the overall strategy, and is the outcome executable in the real world scenario? Only when all these parameters are analyzed, only then we can make use of the outcome of analysis for the purpose of decision making in business scenario. So, we should practically check whether the outcomes of our analysis are really relevant with respect to the business scenario. So, statistical significance sometimes may not be equal to the business importance. So, having identified that the results that we have arrived is statistically significant, we should not conclude that it is also equivalent to business scenario. We should once again analyze it with respect to various parameters that might affect my business. Only then we should conclude whether our analysis is correct or wrong. When we are actually doing this statistical analysis, what exactly we do is we try to collect samples from the data set or from the overall population, and then we run the statistical analysis. Actually speaking, now we have various platforms or environments in which the entire data itself can be considered for the purpose of doing analysis. So, we need not worry about samples that are collected from population. Only when it is required, we need to collect samples and then run the analysis over the samples. So, what is the best way to do the analysis is collect the entire data, try to make use of the entire data to the maximum extent for the purpose of running the analysis. So, when we are sampling, we need to look in for, are we choosing the effective sampling strategy. Suppose if you are choosing a wrong sampling strategy, then we may end up with a completely wrong sample, on which when we run the analysis we may end up with a wrong conclusion. So, we must be very careful when we are working with respect to the sample or whether we are working with respect to the population. Since there are many hardwares as well as platforms in the current environment that supports very large data, we need not even depend on the sample. Instead, we can consider the entire population data set. And when we are running the analysis, try to accommodate as much data as possible, because when we are sampling out for different scenarios or from different data sets, we may end up with different samples. So, now when we run the analysis over such samples, that is different samples, each and every sample set might provide a completely different conclusion. So, what is that we need to do is, we need to capture as much data as possible and we need to run the analysis over these data effectively. So, try to make use of all the data which has been collected for the purpose of analysis. Having identified what are the criterions for good analysis and how to refer a problem correctly, then we should understand how to make good inferences. So, inference is nothing but finally observations that we make from the analysis. So, here in this environment, visualization actually plays a vital role in terms of understanding the given output or in terms of providing complete information about the analysis to say a user. So, when we want to run a good analysis, we should also be very careful in terms of finally what is that we are going to provide to the user and what are the conclusions that we are making. Data visualization is actually very important and it plays a vital role towards such inference making mechanism. An effective visualization can actually bring out very much or more inferences. Inferences are very much important for final decision making. When a wrong inference is made, naturally the decision making process will also go wrong. Therefore, we must be very careful in terms of inferencing. So, today's visualization tools actually allow us to perform different kinds of visualization in different dimensions. So, we have various tools in the real world or various open source tools that might provide very good visualizations. So, we can actually end up with multiple tabbed environment for visualizations, or we may have a graph based visualization or chart based visualization for the underlying data. And in the recent days, even a 3D visualization is also provided for data analytics environment. So, all that we need to clearly do here is choose a proper visualization tool for the purpose of projecting the results, and thereby we can provide as much inference as possible to the users. What is the importance of data visualization? Data visualization actually increases the audience comprehension. Audience comprehension here in the sense to what extent exact information can be acquired or perceived by the audience. This is what is supported by good visualization techniques or tools. and also it helps analytic professionals to become more effort or expert in the given domain. So, these are all certain parameters that will help an analyst or say a business expert more expertise in terms of their domain with the help of data visualization techniques or tools. What are the various open source tools or what are the various open source supports that we have towards data analytics and towards visualization? Let us find what is an open source tool, how it is going to help data visualization. Open source software actually are currently available in large in the real world environment, especially in the worldwide environment. We can find lot of open source softwares that support visualization as well as analytics. So, many bugs actually are being introduced in such open source tools, but in every day we find many more versions that are coming up with respect to such open source tools. Therefore, in any advanced version all such bugs can always be identified and they may be fixed. So, for big data analytic platforms, what are the open source tools that are available? So, we have Hadoop, we have MapReduce, GridGrain, then high performance computing cluster and Storm. Storm is actually owned by Twitter. Twitter actually provides a platform in which its tweets can be easily downloaded and analyzed effectively. Then there are open source tools that are databases or data warehouses. So, we have Cassandra, HBase, MongoDB, CouchDB. CouchDB is associated with Facebook and we have FlockDB. In FlockDB there is a provision for holding graph data and Hive is actually the underlying database for Hadoop environment. Then we have various open source business intelligence tools like Talent, Palo Business Intelligence Suite, then Pentaho and Business Intelligence Report Techniques. Report fundamentally it is a business intelligence report generating techniques. Then for data mining we have Mahout, Orange, and in the recent days many people have identified Orange as a key tool which provides good visualization and also many algorithms inbuilt for the purpose of novice users as well as expert users in data mining domain. And a well established and well proven tool is Veka tool, then we have Keel tool and then Rattle. Rattle is actually based on R language and it is R language analysis to made easy for the purpose of learning. Then we have file systems like Gluster, Hadoop distributed file system. Hadoop distributed file system is the underlying file system related with Hadoop. Then we have open source languages, programming languages like Pig Latin, R language and then ECL for high performance computing cluster environment. So, these are all various open source tools or platforms that are currently available for the purpose of analytics as well as for the purpose of holding big data and also for the purpose of visualizing the results of analytics. So, to summarize, in this module we actually identified how exactly analysis is different from reporting. There are various parameters with which we can clearly distinguish the difference between analysis and report generation environment. And we also discuss about grade criteria which will be used for the purpose of clearly identifying whether the analysis is a quality analysis or not. Then we had various techniques by which we can frame a problem correctly and use it for the purpose of doing the analysis. We also discussed about various validations that can be done using statistical methodologies, and such statistical methodologies will be very useful for the purpose of ending up with conclusion or validating the conclusions of our analysis. And we also found various open source tools or frameworks or supports that is currently available for the purpose of analytics. Thank you.